Hello, this is David from DN Cognitive Counseling. Tonight I'm going to respond to two questions in reference to the last video I did, Then You Ain't Black, when Joe Biden explained why if you don't vote for him, you're not black. In the first question, I was asked, why is it that Democrats like to use certain verbiage and language when speaking to a white audience as opposed to a black audience? I'm just going to take some talk about the first part of the question. And by the way, Beetle Me 2, I think that was the name. I wanted to say thank you very much for the question, and I think it's actually a good question. But I will take a stock in the sense, instead of saying Democrats, which is the entire idea of what I was trying to say, is it's not all. Not every Democrat does that. As not all Republicans do X, Y, or Z, and not all independents do this, and not all liberals do this, and all conservatives do this. There is so much diversity in those groups that I want you to understand that even among Democrats, there is tremendous diversity. You will find Democrats who do, though, the behavior that you said, but you'll also find Republicans that do it. And you'll find independents that do it. But the question's a really good question. Why talk one way in front of one group, but a different way in front of another group? And the truth is, it's a psychological manipulation. The idea is, I want to show the person doing it, I want to show that I understand that group, that I can identify that with that group, that that group and me, we're like this. And when I do that, the idea is that the people are going to relate back to me. And it's a way of trying to build identification. The sad part is, when you don't do it well, it looks very fake, and it makes you look like you're pandering. And the truth is, a lot of times it's done to pander. I'm going to share, I actually do it to a certain degree also. Where I work, I have a lot of people ask me, how are you doing? And my response is, chillin'. Now, it's a statement that I've heard many, many times through the years. And about 90% of the time, somebody will start laughing every time I say it. And it's not to be disparaging, and it's not to be hurtful, but it's because I'm basically saying the same thing I hear all the time, and I mirror back. So another one of that is that I will make a statement in a group or something, and somebody will go, word? And I'll respond back, yeah, word. And I always get a laugh at that one also, because that shows that the response I'm doing is not really the one that you would normally get, but understanding what it would mean, and then I'm confirming what the interpretation is. So again, it really does depend on the nature by which you're doing something and whether or not you really do have an understanding about the language being used. The sad part that I saw, and the reason why I commented on this is an underlying form of racism that we see that we don't talk about in this country. And it's the idea that we look at people and we place them in these boxes. And that's why I brought this up. And that's what I'm trying to say we should stop doing. We shouldn't be doing this about Democrats or Republicans or independents or anybody else for that matter. We should treat people as individuals who do individually poor things. The biggest problem is the people that come to the defense of a situation because of the political agenda. And that's what makes people do pretzels, while they'll start to try to rationalize why this behavior is okay for this person or that person. Just one example would be Nancy Pelosi. I did a video on how you could vote for Joe Biden, yet still believe Tara Reade. And I stand by everything I said in that video to explain that concept for a person that wants to believe that way. But when Nancy Pelosi, who got asked this question, her response wasn't, well, we need to understand that, about what happens, and we have to look at the facts, and then being say, well, you didn't do the same thing over here, and then saying, you know something, we made a mistake, or it was an error. No. It was, oh, this is Joe, which is not an answer. I mean, basically people could have said on the other side, well, that's Brett. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But when you're pretzeling yourself because of your political agenda, your psychological mindset starts to crumble, and then your hypocrisy comes out. I'd rather people start being honest, being open about their beliefs, talk about what they really see and why, and you'll have a much better reaction by doing that than pretzeling yourself. So I'm not a fan of the pandering that goes on, but to answer you again the question, that's why they do it. They're trying to say, I'm part of your group. I relate to your group. And again, more often than not, it misses horribly and causes a lot of problems. But again, thank you very much for your question. To the second question I had on the video, and that comes from Jen. Jen writes, wow, I love that video. Do you think there could ever be one answer? Like, you guys stop being so sensitive, or how could you guys cool it and stop being so inappropriate? Vaguely I know, but I'm hoping I made my point. Jen, I did say in the last video, it's very important, I don't think there'll ever be one answer. I don't think that you're ever going to get to the point where everybody agrees. There's a great movie called Demolition Man about Sylvester Stallone coming to this utopian society, and everything looks so wonderful on the outskirts on the surface of the society, but underneath, where people are living on freedom but not following these rules, they are they have their freedom but living in squalor, and people will choose their freedoms, and that's just the nature of it. And other people would want more of a control to stop certain things. And that's why we have these things going back and forth all the time. Too much freedom, or do we care about how other people feel? And it goes back and forth. Can we see a public begin listening to the messages more than the words? Again, no, because people are going to pick up different things. Everybody's an individual, and people will understand it differently. If we understand the intent and meanings behind the words, can we excuse from the anger of the poor choice of words? And again, Jen, sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Sometimes it depends who the person is. Sometimes if you like the person, and this goes back to the video I did on confirmation bias, and you see how psychologically now why each one fits into the other. That when you understand that you have a confirmation bias, you are more likely to say, oh, that's just Uncle Willie. He says those things all the time, and we just excuse him for that. But that guy who I don't know, with that person in an out-group, I can't excuse that. I don't try to look for that. I'm going to share with you that one of the ways that I've been successful in my career is I look at everybody coming in as I would look like to somebody in my family. I don't try to treat them differently than that. I see them as somebody I care about, despite what their color, sexual orientation, despite what race they're from, despite their language. It doesn't matter. I see them as being basically part of my family. And what would I do with this person in my family who's dealing with this issue? Do I try to be compassionate? Do I care? Do I sometimes have to say, you know, something that's inappropriate, we have to stop that? So again, when you approach that from that point of view, these things become a little easier to at least begin to deal with. And again, at the end, I know you said Daryl Davis is your hero, and you believe most things, if not all, can be resolved, and I happen to agree with that. That his way of approaching is very much that way. And it's something that I've seen in my own practice that's absolutely wonderful, and for the most part works really well. And the sad part is not enough people do it. And you go on, we could, and in my opinion should, have a conversation about why I was offended by what was said, but then let it go. Yes, there is a difference why you get offended and then let things go. No news stories, no Twitter haters, no canceled contracts. Simply, I'm sorry. I didn't realize the word and just went on. Yes, I want to live in a fantasy land. And again, that's beautiful, but we have to deal with what's in reality. And it would be nice if people just apologize for things when they overstep and learn where those lines are for differing people. I always thought that dark past meant dark like skeletons in the closet, or dark when you're depressed or you're in a dark place. I had no idea where it really came from. Learning all of this made me sad, hysterical. No, can you be seriously? Fuzzy wuzzy, really? I like my land of denial, and I really hate the country's racial history. I don't know if those words are what I mean are current racial tensions. And yes, the point is that a lot of the words and the racial history is there. And it's not something we could just make believe doesn't exist. And we shouldn't. We should be able to accept it, be able to talk about it, be able to make people come together by understanding one another. When I was in college many years ago, we were doing a poem about a lynching, and it was written not in rhyme. It was written in a poetry fashion that at that point I will say that I was not as aware of at that age of my life. And we had to write a summary about the poem. And I decided to write a poem on the poem. And I did it in rhyme and explaining it in detail. The professor thought it was very cute, gave me an A. So thank you, and I wish I remember your name. But what I will remember about that was that the professor wrote a comment saying, you know, very cute and very nice. Why do you think the original poem was not written in rhyme? And the answer was obviously because when it was spoken in rhyme that way, it took away the emotional of a negativity, and it made it sound almost humorous. But I never forgot, because I wrote it in rhyme, the last lines of my poem that I wrote. And it actually applies to this about in-groups and out-groups. Why I hate the idea when people start to put people in groups and then say this is what they believe. Whether it's Democrat, Republican, black, white, Hispanic, homosexual, transsexual, I don't care what the label is. That when you label a group and say that this is what they believe, or these people all do this, you're already doing something wrong. And I want you to think about these words. And I wrote this many years ago. These were the last lines after I did the whole poem. Hate is unbending. It won't be undone. It won't ever stop as long as there's sun. As one group supreme, another suppressed, it never will stop. It never will rest. And that's the problem and the issue. So while we have all these discussions, as long as I see you different than me and you see me different than you, we're going to have issues with these problems. As soon as we see each other as being part of the same family, those issues go away. If I treat you with that level of respect and you treat me with that level of respect, then we make the world a better place in reference to those types of things. And then we can have an honest discussion about those types of things and where we get hurt. I don't want to hurt you. You don't want to hurt me. And then we can have a conversation. And then we could sometimes laugh. And then it could be okay. But as soon as I see you as the out-group and you see me as an out-group, that's when problems arise. And this is why you could see two people in the same color, in the same neighborhood. One puts on a red bandana, one puts on a blue bandana, and now they want to kill each other. I hope that you liked this video. I hope that you found it interesting. I hope that you will share this. And again, that if you didn't subscribe to the channel, that you do. And there'll be a link at the bottom here to put you over here for the Patreon account, for Subcribe-star to become a patron if you want to support the channel. Again, thank you very much. Have a good night and good mental health.